Hello, my name is Jacob Monk. Welcome to this short video about the 4 laws of Lyndon LaRouche and why they do not work. I'm a follower of Lyndon LaRouche. I've read quite a lot of his texts and quite a few of his books. Let me show you some. Christian Science, The Science of Christian Economy. This one, The Ugly Truth About Milton Friedman. And here, Now You're Ready to Learn Economics. Well, I read them all. And I consider myself quite well educated when it comes to Lyndon LaRouche economy. And here's my verdict. Lyndon LaRouche economy is not working. I can tell you, I agree with the wife of Lyndon LaRouche, Helge LaRouche, and her support of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. I think it's very good. I think USA and China and Russia has to work together to create big infrastructure projects to make international trade. Instead of fighting wars and preparing wars, we should trade and exchange culture. Well, I agree with Lyndon LaRouche about that, but I don't agree with him about his economical systems. And I think it's plain wrong when he and his wife, they claim that the Chinese, they have learned their Belt and Road Initiative. It is inspired by Lyndon LaRouche. Well, the fact is that not even one single book written by Lyndon LaRouche has ever been translated into Chinese. So how should it happen that the Chinese policy, 1.4 billion people, their ideology should be inspired by Lyndon LaRouche? Well, I don't think so. I think they have read Karl Marx, they have read Lenin, they have read their own political leaders and economists, and they are able to think themselves absolutely without help from the Western world and without help from Lyndon LaRouche. But it happens that Lyndon LaRouche is very much in agreement with the Chinese when it comes to strategic economic policy, and that is good. Well, now back to the 4 laws of Lyndon LaRouche and why they do not work. We take them once at a time, and when I have ended, I'll show you 4 laws that actually will work to change the world. Not only to change the USA, but to change the whole world for the better. Lyndon LaRouche's first law is separate investment and speculation. Well, he talks about Glass-Steagall law. It's an old law that was in use during Franklin D. Roosevelt in USA. The idea is that banking must only be a place where you can place your money, invest your money, and then after some time, after 10 years, 50 years, you can get the same money back. Banks are not allowed to invest this money in shares, in any kind of project, because these projects, for example, if a bank, it has 500,000 investors, they each invest, let us say, $30,000. Well, that's quite a lot of money. And they could take all the money, change them into cash, and put them in a number of big containers out in a warehouse. But that would be a very bad way of storing this money, because the money loses its value. There is something called inflation. So when the investors comes back 20 years later, then they can get exactly the same number of dollars back. Well, you invented $10,000, here you're $10,000 back. But today $10,000 has only half of the value as the $10,000 you invested 20 years ago. So therefore it's not a good idea to have banks that are only allowed to do non-investment. No, banks has to be allowed to try to use the money they get and keep the value of this money, maybe even make the value grow. Because in any banks today, no, not in any banks, in most banks, there are shareholder companies. And of course, the share owners, I'm a share owner myself in a big Scandinavian bank. Of course, I wouldn't invest in this bank if I was not allowed to have any profit out of my investment. That would be very stupid. Therefore, there is no reason to make a Glass-Steagall law in Scandinavia or anywhere else in any capitalist society. We're not talking socialism, because socialism is not working. We know that. We are talking capitalism. Capitalism is the kind of society where you invest money and you expect to get the same amount of money back. Therefore, the banks has to be able to invest the money in shares for company, in gold, and in any kind of asset that can grow in value over time. The idea of Glass-Steagall is very bad, but if you really want to have Glass-Steagall investment, well, here in Denmark we have some banks that do not use the investors' money to speculate. We have a few banks. I won't mention their names because you can go to your own bank and ask, or go to a public service and ask. There are banks, they do not invest your money in shareholder companies or in any kind of speculation. But then you have to accept that when you want your money back, they will have decreased in value. If you invest 10,000 kroner here in Denmark, we are talking about kroner, when you get back in 10 years and want your money back, then they'll only have the value of 8,000 kroner, or maybe even less, because the bank was not allowed to invest them in a rational way. Well, maybe you shouldn't put your money in the banks at all. You should keep them yourself. But what will you do with this money? Will you put them in a coffin out in your garden? No, I hope you will invest them. You can invest in shares yourself. You don't have to use a bank. You can invest in shares or in something else. There are many ways of investing. Investing them in dollars, in gold, in silver, in shares for oil, and so on and so forth. But you have to invest the money if you want the money to keep their value or even to grow. If you don't do that, the money will lose their value. Therefore, the Lyndon LaRouche idea of making a Glass-Steagall law preventing banks from investing in productive companies, well, it's a very bad law that will make it a bad investment to put your money in the banks. And when you can't put your money in the banks, then what? There's a reason that in any country in the Western world, USA, Europe, Denmark, banks are allowed to put their money in productive investments. But you are not forced to invest your money in that kind of bank. You can use another bank if you don't want to be what you call a financial investors. You don't want to speculate, as we call it here in Denmark. Spekulere på børsen, that means to invest your money as a stockbroker and see if they grow or not. Well, that was idea number one, very bad. Idea number two, national banking. Well, all kind of nationalism is bad. Today, economy is international, and banking is international too. You cannot have national banking. That's a very, very bad idea, because then you cannot move your money from one country to another. Or if you need to move them, you have to put them in another bank to transfer them from one company to another. So that is not a good idea. Any big bank today has local banks they own in many countries. For example, Danish banks, they have local offices in Spain, in Germany, in London, in USA, in Eastern Europe, in Russia, everywhere. You need to have that because people are traveling. They want to invest their money in a certain bank and travel to another country and get their money back in the same bank. Therefore, banks has to be international. Also, if you want to invest in a rational way, you have to invest in international companies, because all economy of the future is international. So I really don't understand Lyndon LaRouche when he talks about national banking. National banking is going broke banking, because it's totally irrational, without any future, without any profit. And the idea of investors in a bank, no matter if you invest as an owner or you invest your money because you have too much money at the moment, you don't know how to use them, you want to use them in 5 or 10 years, that is also a kind of investment in a bank. All investors want to have their money back with some kind of interest. When you invest in a Danish or American bank, the interest rate maybe 2, 3, 5%. And if this bank is not allowed to invest in productive companies, they are not allowed to invest in a way that the investment will grow, then your interest rate will be lower. The Lyndon LaRouche project will mean that the interest rate for investors will go from 5% until maybe 2%, 1%, or even 0. So it's a very bad idea, and the best idea is exactly the opposite. Please don't make any national banks. We need international banks. Also because national banks, they are subordinate to the local politicians, and local politicians in any country, Denmark, Greece, Germany, France, USA, they are not trustworthy. They can change their policy from one day to another, and that will highly affect your investment in a local bank. So don't use local banks. Don't follow the Lyndon LaRouche advice. It is very bad. Let's go to number 3. Increase the productivity. Well, I agree with Lyndon LaRouche about that. Increase productivity. You can increase productivity several ways. First, using modern technology. And second, organize your production in a rational way. And third, make cheap trade with other producing companies, because any kind of production today is not made on one single place. It is many companies placed all over the world, all over Europe. They work together and sell their goods to each other. Therefore, transportation is a key concept and a key moment for setting the price of any given product. Therefore, to increase productivity means, 1, to have effective laborers. That means we have to choose the best labor force, and not only national labor force coming from Denmark, coming from USA, but from an international market. We want to have the best IT specialists there is in the world. That is the way to increase productivity. Also, we want to have the best technology in the world, and therefore it's very bad that USA have technology restrictions and restrictions against free trade. free trade with Europe, free trade with Russia, with Iran, and with a lot of other countries. Well, to go against free trade is to go against development of the economy. So Donald Trump and Lyndon LaRouche, they are plain wrong when they go against free trade, because free trade is the key moment of creating richness. That was what economist, the most famous founding economist in the last century, explained to us, Adam Smith, and so on and so forth. Fault number 4 in Lyndon LaRouche economy. Sorry, number 3, I agree with Lyndon LaRouche. I wouldn't say it is a fault, but you have to understand that national banking is against international trade. And when you go against international trade, you are going against development of productivity. So the ideas of Lyndon LaRouche will decrease productivity and make all of us more poor. Point number 4, fusion cash program. Well, Lyndon LaRouche is so fond of fusion energy. And it could be it's a good idea, I don't know. I'm not a physicist, but I know that there have been experiments with fusion energy for more than 50 years. And until now, it has not been successful. There has been invested billions of dollars in USA, in Europe, in Russia, in China. And until now, the result, they have been unfortunately not very good. But maybe it will change in the future. But Lyndon LaRouche is not right when he says just invest in more research. Well, there are many areas in this world where we have to make research. When it comes to free trade, we need to have more research how to develop free trade. When it comes to education, we have to have more research. When it comes to pollution, we have to have more research. Well, when it comes to productivity, we need more research. And Lyndon LaRouche, he is a follower of the idea that we need more productivity. Yes, of course we do. Therefore, we need a lot of research in many areas. We can't use all the money for fusion research. And the idea that we have to colonize Mars in the near future, it is absolutely unrealistic. That is not the problem we have. At the moment, more than 1 million children are dying in Africa every year. We need to invest in raising the economic level in Africa, go against hunger, not to make rockets to Mars or to the moon. This is waste of money compared to the problems we actually have in the world of 2018. Well, now I have rejected 3 of the 4 laws of Lyndon LaRouche. First of all, I have to say that these laws, they are not laws at all. They are the political ideals of the former Democratic presidential candidate called Lyndon LaRouche. They are not economical laws, they are economical ideals that this person and his followers, they believe in. Well, that is okay, but now I'm going to tell you about 4 laws that are working, all of them. The Lyndon LaRouche laws, 3 out of 4, they are counterproductive and will make USA and the world a more poor place. But here you have 4 laws that will increase welfare and productivity everywhere. Law number 1, we need another international valuta than the dollar. We don't want USA to control international trade and impose trade sanctions on a lot of countries that they don't like. We want a world with the highest level of free trade, because free trade means cheap products and better ways to create jobs all over the world so the unemployed people can travel and find a place where their specific education and their specific qualifications can be used. That will be easy if we are able to travel and if USA is not controlling the economic life of the whole world by using the dollar and sanctions against Russia, Europe, Iran, Korea, and so on and so forth. Again, a lot of countries they don't like in Hollywood and they don't like in Washington. We want a world where any government can decide and the citizens in this country can decide themselves what kind of political system they want. We don't want the American political systems. We have our own system. We think they are better than the American system. Anyone can see the American political life is counterproductive and it is not very effective. All fight with each other and it is some kind of Hollywood movie going on in the media. It is not rational politics for the improvement of the life and economy in USA and certainly not in the whole world. Well, we want another valuta than the dollar. Point number 2, we don't want to stop militarization. USA want all the NATO countries and probably the whole world to buy American weapons. To buy American weapons, they have to tell the world that the Russians and the Chinese, they are a threat against Europe, against Asia, against everywhere. But that is not true. The threat is coming for USA. They are the one who destroys countries that try to go an independent way. Well, probably you've heard about Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi. They were both persons who tried to introduce another valuta than the dollar. And you know, they were both killed by the Americans. So stop US militarizations. We don't need more weapons in the world. We need less weapons. We want to use our money another way. And the idea that not only we want to have the double amount of money of weapons as we are now, but we have to buy them, all of them in USA. Well, we are not that stupid that we want to send more money to USA. USA is the has the highest level of pollution in the whole world. The production and the economy and the consumption in USA is the reason why USA makes the most pollution in the whole world per capita. I know China has more pollution when you see it as a whole country, but in China there are living 4 times as many people as in USA. When you take pollution per capita, USA is the world leader. Number 2 is Canada, 3 Australia, 4 Europe. Well, they are the countries that needs to cut down to save the world. Here we have rule number 3. The Belt and Road Initiative is very good. We need to support the Belt and Road Initiative because it's a part of free trade. I don't want to go too deep into that because I'm sure that Lyndon LaRouche agrees with me. But let me take then point number 4. To save the world and to develop the economy is the reduction of the pollution. A reduction of the pollution, it starts not in China, not in Europe, but in USA. Well, as far as I know, Lyndon LaRouche never talks about it. He thinks this is no problem, it will solve itself. But it will not. We have to stop development of CO2 and any kind of pollution that will threaten the world in the future. And this change, it has to start in USA, but it is the reason for pollution, the reason number one. Every citizen in USA, that means the pollution per capita in USA is 4 times as much as in China and India. It is around the double of what it is in Europe. So USA is the world criminal number one when it comes to pollution, and that has to stop, because pollution will be a catastrophe for this world if nothing is done. So here you have the 4 economical rules that can save the world. Only one of Lyndon LaRouche's rules is really effective and will help USA and the world. But these coming 4 rules, they will all help saving the world. First, create another non-American valuta, a non-dollar international valuta. 2, stop US militarization. 3, stop border limits, create free trade, hopefully all over the world. Stop all kind of trade sanctions or political sanctions. Every country must have the right to decide themselves what kind of political systems they want. And 4, do something effective about reducing the pollution from USA. This is the world leader in pollution, and therefore they have the maximum responsibility. And what will they have to do? It's not creating more windmills. It won't help at all. No, it's reducing their number of flights by airplanes, reducing their number of cars, and reducing the meat they are eating. These are the 3 main reasons for the CO2 pollution in USA and anywhere else in the world. Meat production, cars, and airplanes. Then you have to change something about your industry also. But now you've heard the 3 reasons for the pollution that you have to change. And this will be a hard change because the American voters, they don't like it. So this kind of change that the world needs, it won't be very popular among the American voters. But nevertheless, we need this change if we want to save USA and save the whole world in peace. Thank you for listening.